Hey everyone, we're back with another IELTS reading lesson. This lesson we'll be going through matching heading, paragraph, and sentence ending questions. So without any further ado, let's get started. The tasks for these question types are as follows. For matching heading questions, you have to choose a heading from the list which matches a section or paragraph in the passage. For matching paragraphs, you have to choose a heading from the list which matches a section or a paragraph in the passage. And for sentence endings, you have to complete sentences by matching the start of the sentence with the correct ending given in a list. Now let's look at the question type requirements in more detail. For matching headings, this question type requires you to match the heading in the question to the correct paragraph or reading section in the text. Some points to note are: there will always be more headings than paragraphs or sections, so that some headings will not be used. There are some possibilities that some of the text may not be included in the task, and this task type is used with texts that contain paragraphs that have clearly defined themes. It's also important to know what you're being tested on so that you can work on things. So what's being tested for this question type? You'll be tested on your ability to recognize the main idea in the paragraph and to identify supporting ideas. This question has a couple of tricky parts. Let's look at them. It takes a little more time than other questions to complete, and why that is because you have to go through the paragraphs in a little more detail in order to match the correct heading. There are more headings than paragraphs. Again, this is to check whether you are able to recognize the main idea in the paragraphs, which leads us to our next point in correlation to the previous point, that some paragraphs don't need headings. You will just have to see which heading matches the correct paragraph. There are some similarities between headings. This is again another way to confuse you. This is also why this question type takes longer to complete, because you will have to skim the paragraphs in a little more detail in order to find the correct answer. Next, it might be misleading because headings might only include specific details rather than the main idea. This is where finding keywords and understanding vocabulary comes into play. And last but not least, it will take more time to find the answers because some headings have the same words that are in the paragraph but don't match. So you'll not only have to look out for the key words, but also make sure the meanings are the same. Have a look at the example on the next slide. As you can see, there are 9 headings but only 6 paragraphs mentioned in the instructions. Now, let's move on to matching paragraphs. You will be given statements that you will have to match with the information in the paragraphs, and the types of information that might be asked to match are facts, descriptions, opinions, predictions, definitions, explanations, reasons, and/or challenges. You'll be tested on your paraphrasing skills, so it's really important to make sure you understand how paraphrasing works. If you need a refresher memory, you can check out the lesson titled IELTS Reading Strategy 2, Identifying Paraphrases. Just like matching headings, matching paragraphs also has tricky aspects. First of all, the answers will not come in the same order in the text as the order of the list of statements, so you will really have to pay attention and look out for the right answer. It's important to realize that some paragraphs might not contain an answer, which means again, it might take longer to locate the correct answer. But that being said, one paragraph might contain more than one answer, so read the questions carefully and then skim through the paragraphs carefully. The next slide will show you an example of how this question type looks. Moving on to matching sentence endings. You will have a list of incomplete sentences and you will have to match it to the sentence endings listed with the help of paragraphs. For example, as we can see here, and we'll read through the instructions first. Complete each sentence with the correct ending. We can see 4 questions and 6 endings that have to be matched. Alright, before we move on to how to tackle these question types, let's look at some tips. Some of these might be repeated, but it's just as important. Some tips for matching paragraphs are to know that the answers may not or will not come in the same order. Some paragraphs might not contain an answer, or a paragraph might contain more than one answer, so be on the lookout for that. Scan for key words in the question or question statements especially. Keep this question type for the end if needed. Moving on to tips for matching sentence endings. Remember, the answers appear in the same order in the text as in the order of the list of incomplete sentences. Use a process of elimination to select the correct answers. When you find the answer to one question, you can cross it off on your question paper to avoid confusion. Skimming for relevant details will help you find the answers faster. Look out for sentence endings in the passage and make sure it matches the incomplete sentence. Also, look out for synonyms and/or paraphrased words. And last but not least, tips for matching headings. Cross out each heading as you match it. If you can't find the answer, move on and come back to it later. Now that we've covered what these question types entail, let's look at strategies we can use to attempt the same. The common thing for all these question types is to read the instructions very carefully. For all three questions, it's also important to read the questions first. Understand the meaning and then go on to underline or highlight any key words so that when you go on to skim the passage, you can locate the answers faster. Again, make sure the key words in the question statements and the passage have the same meaning because, as we discussed before, the same words might be mentioned throughout the passage and the exact meaning might differ, so do be mindful of that. Once you're able to find the answers, eliminate the option to avoid confusion. And there we have it. Tips and strategies to help you answer matching heading, paragraph, and/or sentence ending questions. Be sure to practice these question types as they do take some time to complete. Remember that the IELTS reading exam lasts for only 1 hour, so practicing these are essential. Let's do a quick lesson recap before we go. We learned the definition of matching heading, paragraph, and/or sentence ending questions, the requirements of these question types, things to look out for, tips on attempting these question types, and strategies that you can use for these question types. Join me in the next lesson where we'll look at table and/or flowchart completion questions. See you then!